U.S. President Donald Trump says that is the message he'll be conveying when he addresses the UN General Assembly surprisingly tomorrow. Not once more, he says, simply make the United Nations incredible. The UN is an association that Mr. Trump has firmly reprimanded. He's already portrayed it as only a club for individuals to get together, talk and have a decent time, not a companion of popular government. And at a meeting in D.C. a year ago he alluded to the express shortcoming and ineptitude of the United Nations. In particular, he's blamed the association for endeavoring to disrupt Israel, of squandering cash and neglecting to carry out its occupation of settling strife. I have long felt the United Nations is an underperformer however has huge potential, he told representatives over lunch a couple of months prior. I don't believe it's lived up, I know it hasn't satisfied the potential. In view of that his discourse to the General Assembly tomorrow is exceptionally expected. This organization started its term in office bashing the UN, saying it would cut colossal measures of subsidizing for the United Nations and even presented a spending saying that it will do that, Stuart Patrick from the Council on Foreign Relations told the ABC. In any case, all of a sudden, finished the most recent few months, there is by all accounts to a greater degree a decent working relationship that is advancing between the United States and the UN, at any rate on a few issues. As of now Mr. Trump and U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley have announced a pledge to UN change, something that will have the help of his insurrectionary base but at the same time is superbly coordinated to fit the motivation of new UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Mr. Guterres has announced a goal to execute clearing changes to administration and responsibility, promising more straightforwardness and less spending waste. Change will be troublesome. In a frustratingly bureaucratic association like the UN that is adequately overseen by various nations, its operations skewed by governmental issues and motivation, it's a huge assignment that will take a very long time to accomplish. In any case, given that UN administration needs it as well, the president can drive his change motivation without putting the association offside. We recognize the Secretary-General and his require the United Nations to concentrate more on individuals and less on organization, Mr. Trump said today. We look for a United Nations that recaptures the trust of the general population around the globe. With a specific end goal to accomplish this, the United Nations must consider each level of administration responsible, secure shriek blowers and concentrate on comes about as opposed to on process. The organization's view is that the UN ought to take the necessary steps of its lords, not control the motivation. Mr. Trump's discourse will be nearly viewed by the individuals who fear he's retreating on some of his center guarantees, and being impacted by the foundation that he promised to shake up. Others will look for knowledge into the president's reality, particularly those shook by his neutralist talk amid the battle, and after that confounded by activities that mirror a less radical remote strategy move than he foreshadowed. As far as impression, the U.S. appointment is altogether littler than in years past, just around 300 individuals from the Department of State will be in New York, as indicated by Mr. Patrick. That is dangerous in light of the fact that I think it proposes to numerous worldwide onlookers and accomplices that the U.S. is downsizing the significance that it gives the United Nations, he said. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, who has performed for all intents and purposes a vanishing demonstration, has concentrated such a great amount on rebuilding the State Department that he hasn't named the right-hand secretaries. There are just around 2 of them that have been affirmed out of something like 24 positions, thus it is a tad bit like going into the field of fight with no field commanders. The U.S. position on the UN stays vague. However, the consideration will be immovably on the Commander-in-Chief. Donald Trump will remain before the group of onlookers of 192 other part conditions of the United Nations, and they will be on edge to get notification from him about what he trusts the part of the United Nations is and does he see a part for American administration, Mr. Patrick said. It's an expression he has for all intents and purposes never articulated. Does despite everything he see the United States being a pioneer and champion of the United Nations? How does America first and that whole belief system that depends on patriotism and populism end in, exceptionally limit perspective of the U.S. part on the planet. How does that in reality square with the points and aspirations of the United Nations, which remains for the aggregate great? Notwithstanding dangers, Mr. Trump has not pulled back from NATO, forced taxes on China or pulled back from the Iran atomic arrangement, yet. Evading the Paris atmosphere ascension and fiery tweets and talk with respect to North Korea, in any case, keep on having heads turning among those attempting to see exactly where the president is originating from and where his designs may lead. With North Korea strains raising, Mr. Trump and Ms. Haley have utilized the UN to push for and accomplish harder authorizations than any time in recent memory. North Korea will be up front to talks this week, Ms. Haley says. I for one think he slaps the correct individuals, he embraces the ideal individuals, and he turns out with the U.S. being extremely solid at last, she told correspondents at a White House squeeze preparation on Friday. In any case, would the world go along with him? With him?